You might see my face turn away because my camera is on right in front of that monitor and my screen is over here. So I'm going to turn over and may not look like I'm talking to you directly, but I am. Excuse me. I've been fighting a cold. So here we are in ProPresenter 6. If you're on ProPresenter 5, there's a lot of similarities. If you're on 4, it's kind of different. If you're on 3, it's more like 5 and 6. So that's just a little bit. Basically, what I tell people about ProPresenter is that while it can do some of the same things as Keynote and PowerPoint and Google Slides, really, to me, it feels like a Ferrari versus those being Volkswagen Bugs and Yugos, and just they all get you from point A to point B. It's just some do it better. So that is what ProPresenter is. Let's first talk about the UI here. So this right here, you should know that I am using the unregistered version. You see my mouse here. And the unregistered version does everything that the fully registered version does, except it puts this watermark there on the output. What that matters to you is if you're at home and you want to build a presentation, you can do that in the free version that you download with the watermark. Not a problem whatsoever. The watermark only is added when you show it. So even if you wanted to hook this up to your TV at home just to get a sense of what it's going to be like, where you're presenting, I'm going to guess most of you are going to be presenting at church, but there are some business uses of ProPresenter. Let's just say that that's what you're going to do. Then the only thing is it will have that watermark. When you export it and take it to church or wherever, then when you import it into the licensed version of ProPresenter, then it won't have that watermark anymore. So the watermark follows where the thing is, not where it was created. Important thing number one. Up here we have the toolbar. I'm tempted to pull this down because there's a toolbar up here that I see, but anyway. So the toolbar up here, I don't think this is actually the default toolbar. This has a few tweaks that I've made, but you've got the clear all, clear slides, clear backgrounds, clear props, clear audio, new, the editor window, video image bin, that's down here, audio. If I click there, you can see that I've got a couple of Striper songs because I come by the hair naturally. I liked the Christian metal in the 80s and early 90s. Okay, so the audio bin goes there, messages, Pro Remote, the store where you can get stuff. Social media, this used to be more than just Twitter, but Facebook locked down Instagram, so really it's just Twitter right now. Templates, we'll talk a little bit about those probably. Format, output. This is a little troubleshooting tip. If you've got nothing on the output and it's red like this, click on it and you'll see that right now I have this set up to where it's showing on the same screen. I'll show you how to fix that. Volume, also another important thing. If it's down low and the icon looks like that and you don't have any sound, that's why you don't have any sound. So that's an important piece of information. Let's go into ProPresenter preferences, and I want to show you real quick there. So here, what I did earlier when it was locking up is ProPresenter, sometimes some of these user files will become corrupted. So what I did was I went to wherever they were and I renamed the folder to let ProPresenter redo. So it regenerated some of these, and it turns out that it was a corrupted file in there. That's just a little trick. So this is going to be really high level. I sometimes do like day-long training, so an hour is really not going to be a lot. But so I just want to touch on that. Displays. This is a neat little thing. So I have 3 displays. I'm using a MacBook Pro. So I have the built-in display, which is right here. The one you're looking at is right here. This is the output. So actually, if I wanted to fix it to where the output was not on the same screen, just by doing that, and I happen to know the keyboard shortcut is Command-1 on the Mac, you can't tell that it turned on, but it did. I'm going to turn that back off. SD means stage display. Again, I have 3 different outputs. Normally it's set up like this, where I have the output over here on the screen you're looking at. My control screen is the one built into the MacBook Pro, and to the right I've got another one that sends the stage display. So that is something that I just love that feature. You can configure the stage display in a bunch of different ways. Here, let me drag that over here. This is just one possible layout where I've got the current time in the clock, current slide, next slide, and a message if I wanted to send a message to the people on stage. So that's kind of the layout of my stage display. Down here, this sets the resolution. If I just want to click on full screen, that's going to change it to whatever the output screen's resolution is. So if I move it over here, you'll notice well, it's not doing what I expected it to do, but let's put that back. Anyway, that is about those screens. This little enable siphon thing down here, let me get a drink of water real quick. Enable siphon doesn't seem like it does anything. You check that it's not obvious. Again, I'm on the Mac version, so we'll talk about some of the differences between the PC version and the Mac version here in a minute. But this is a little utility that they added in ProPresenter 6 for the Mac version. There's a similar thing called Sprout, but it's not in the PC version. And basically, it takes the output and makes it available as a webcam. Well, basically a webcam to any device that's aware of Siphon, including ProPresenter. So ProPresenter can both receive Siphon sources. So CamTwist is a Siphon source. It's a free piece of software. You'll notice that I could also do my webcam, which is the one you're looking at me through, etc. Jumping back to labels, this is where you do your labels for your verses, your choruses here in these groups, and slide labels. Network, this is first off, if you don't have that enabled, none of the rest of it can work. So you have to leave that as enabled. Then we have enable master control. So if you have the master control module, you can have this be the slave that's controlled by another ProPresenter instance, or vice versa. I don't have the master control module on this particular version because it's the unregistered version. So there's that. And then the Pro Remote, you actually have 2 modes. You have a controller mode where the default password is control, the default password for the observer is, you're never going to guess, observe. So someone who has the Pro Remote, if they don't have the password, they can't control ProPresenter. But if you had that checked and you gave them the password or you left it blank, then they could watch what ProPresenter did. Stage Display app. This is a cool little thing that you can do with an Apple TV or with the Stage Display app on iOS or Android, that you can use that instead of a connected Stage Display. And enable text stream for PVP2. That's something that PVP3 actually doesn't do. It now uses NDI instead of text stream. So there's some positives. Text stream kind of had some issues. I'm seeing a lot of questions. I'll get to those here in just a minute here. This is Sync, either with ProCloud, which is Renewed Vision's product, or you can locally sync between ProPresenter instances on your same network. Services, this is for Planning Center. You can see that I've logged in with my church. I also have a place to log in for Twitter. It used to have a place for Instagram until Facebook decided they didn't want people using that anymore. And then Song Select. And then we have Advanced. This is a couple of cool little things. Background, when you import a background, notice it's import video image scale behavior. So let's say you're importing a bunch of background pictures that are 4:3, but you've got a 16:9 screen. So stretch to fill will stretch everything until it's full screen, which if it's a picture of a person would make them look shorter and fatter. So keep that in mind. The other, scale to fit here, what that will do is it'll make it fit in one of the directions. So if it's a portrait picture, it will expand the whole thing until it's the size to fill top to bottom, but then leave the left and right empty. If it's a portrait picture, it might expand it left and right and leave stuff on the top and bottom. So that's important to know as well. And scale to fill, that will just make it big, keep making it big until it fills everything, not stretching everything, just zooming in until it fills everything. So generally for background, I think stretch to fill is probably what you want to do, because sometimes you'll have like a 16:10 screen and 16:9 images, you know, slightly a little bit of stretching is no big deal, something like that. Foreground has the same stuff here. You can do some troubleshooting here. I've got a video on that. Show on-screen video performance, but suffice it to say, if you see words on your screen that have something to do with video, like here, let me show you. See that down here? Depending on the resolution you're watching at, you might not be able to see it, but here, let me go full screen. So you see down here, video memory 15.289 PBO, FBO, that is that stuff. So normally you're going to want that off, but I've seen people accidentally turn it on and have problems. You can show the audio meter here, right here. I normally leave that on, and you can do a little delay if you need to. Modules, these are some advanced features in ProPresenter. We'll maybe cover them in a future webinar, but they enable you to do some more fun things than you can already do. So going back to the interface, we have the preview window, and the preview window can either be the output, or it can also be the stage display. Yep. Command 3 on the Mac takes you there. I've got a ProPresenter 6 keyboard shortcut document that you guys can download if you're interested in it. I'll get you a link to that. Actually, let me type that right there. That's tdm.fyi/pro6 keyboard alpha for alphabetic, and you can get those as well. So the library, just before we started this, when I was having trouble, I basically disconnected the library. So I need to go back in here. The way you add in the song, there's 3 ways to do it, but let me just show you. New document, and then you can give it a name. Let's say it's Amazing Grace. Then you can put it into a category. Let's call this, if I can type, hymns. You can put it into a category, change the resolution that you want to present it at, and select a template for it. So basically that's a way that you want it to look. So just to mix it up, let's do Clouds full screen lyric, and then okay. So now we go there. I'm going to right click, go into the editor by clicking edit slide, and now I can type it in. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Then I can add in another one. That saved a wretch like me. Okay, and I'm going to get out of that. Obviously, this is probably a little small for most of your situations, but you can see just how easy it is to add that in. I could also copy and paste, or I could use song select. So if we click here, if you are logged into song select, by default, this will be checked. Someone asked earlier, Helen asked actually, so I'm going to tackle this since we're talking about song select right here. Song select, if you have that checked, and there are tons of churches that do, every time you do a search, so even if I do a search for Amazing Grace, you'll see that it wants me to log in, and if I was logged in, it would do a search right there. So every time you do a search, it's pinging song select. If virtually every church is doing a search for in their library, even when they don't need to hit the song select servers, on Sundays and Wednesdays especially, also Saturdays, not just because there are denominations that do church on Saturday, but also their Saturday evening services and such, then these servers are getting overwhelmed. So I want to suggest to you that we all uncheck that unless you need it. And I think that'll help. Unfortunately, the servers that Song Select has allocated to Renewed Vision can't handle their traffic, and that's why. So that's at least part of it. You know, they could absolutely put more server resources behind it, but that's the cause of it. So when at all possible, if you could do your search for Song Select Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, those days, you're probably going to have a lot more luck. especially if it's during the day, than if you do it on a Sunday morning right before church starts. I know that's not always possible, but if it is possible, then that's what I would do there, Helen. So um, that is what I wanted to tell you about Song Select. Okay, so we've got the preview window, we've got the library, the search in the library, and we've got the playlists. Playlists are, think of it as your Sunday morning order of worship. So I have a couple of different playlists here, you see, because I messed up stuff. I'm not going to click on any of the rest of these because it'll do the exact same thing because it can't find these things. Yeah. If I hadn't been working on a ProPresenter tutorial, then I wouldn't have this issue. But so that's your order of worship. These are your individual elements in your order of worship. So your songs, your pre-service loops, you can add a countdown to a specific slide, etc. Here, let's go back to Amazing Grace, and so on. So dragging those into the order of worship is just like that. You just drag it, drop it, and now it's there. I know it couldn't be opened. I know. Okay, so now when it comes to doing that particular song, what you're going to want to do is either click on the slide, like I'm doing, or you can hit the space bar, and that'll do it. You can also hit the left and right arrow keys, and that'll take you to the next element in the service. So you see that I'm just going back and forth. Another important thing for you to know is that ProPresenter, like ogres in Shrek, or onions, or a parfait, is based on layers. In fact, I've got a picture that I keep on my desktop of the layers. So let me see if I can't find that real quick. And show it to you. I've got too many things open. Ah, there it is. So let me show you this, because this is real important for understanding ProPresenter. We've got the background color. That's at the very back of everything. Above that is the live video layer. I, in general, encourage people not to use the live video for a camera because it introduces about 3 frames of latency, which is enough that people notice. You would think a 1/10 of a second, that goes by so fast, it's enough for people to notice. So maybe occasionally for a baptism service you would use it, but really a video switcher is what you want instead. Video playback, that is what I like to call the media layer. That's where the videos or backgrounds, foregrounds and backgrounds are played on this layer. If it's a foreground video, it will not play anything on the slides layer. If it's a background video, it will. The slides layer is where all the text is located. So in this example, the text here is located on the slides layer. Let's see here. On this slides layer. And actually what they've done in this particular case is they've also put a picture on the slides layer. You wouldn't put a video on the slides layer because every time you switch to a new slide, the video would start over or it would go away depending on if you'd put it there or not. But a picture, you can kind of fool it. Templates only deal with the slides layer. They don't deal with any backgrounds. The props layer is a layer that's persistent over the slides, so you can do some fun things with that. You might think of like network television, they put like a little bug in the corner. You could put like a bug in the corner with your church's logo on all the slides. Or something I've done is I've put like a video with transparency that has snow falling, and that's a cool thing that you can do during Christmas. And then the mask layer is on top of all that. That's usually used for environmental projection. So a lot of people basically only deal with these two layers, the slides layer and the media layer, which this is from the ProPresenter manual. So they called it the video playback, but I think slides is or media layer is a better way to think about it. So that's those layers. Down here we have the video image bin, which you can hide if you want to, and you can organize them based on some different things. I could change this from blue dominant to, you know, here, let me clear the slides layer and you can see it. So I could change that to like high energy if I wanted to. Or in this case, I've called it blue dominant. Let me stop that so it doesn't take up resources from my computer. And you'll notice that when I click on this, if this was on the media layer, it would replace it. But when I click clear slides up here, it's still there. And that's because right click, edit slide, they have put it right here. Let's see here, where are we? Layers. Yep, right there. That's this image and this is the text. And if I click here, I can edit the text. So I could make that big just as easily as it was small. Just more things you can do in the editor. So that's just kind of a high-level overview of ProPresenter, and I want to leave time for some questions. I've already addressed Helen's, but Dylan, I'll answer yours here in just a second. But I want you to stick around because I've got some more stuff to talk to you about, and I want to answer as many questions as I possibly can as part of this. So Dylan says, I was wondering if you can project a PowerPoint onto the stage display without having to use a switch to go back and forth between ProPresenter 6 and PowerPoint. At this point, we are using an iPad, and they are looking at ProPresenter from the computer's side of view. So There are a couple of ways to do it. Most people, when it comes to PowerPoint, like to export PowerPoint as stills and then import those into ProPresenter so that you get the same stuff. You don't get the animations. Under very few circumstances do you get animations in ProPresenter from PowerPoint because they're not the same animations. So we get some funkiness if they tried to make those the same. But that's what most people like to do. If you do that, what you can do is on the stage display, if we go into preferences and back to display and configure stage display, let me bring this back on over. Okay, and then click here. Let's go for, let me lower this just a bit so that maybe I can, all this. Okay, so it looks like I don't have one up here anymore. So I'm going to create one. So we're going to call this PowerPoint. And what we're going to do is where it says text only for current slide, we're going to call that a static slide. It could be a live slide too. A live slide will play video, but since in this case it's just stills and it's what's showing up on screen, then we can do that. I'm going to shut this down and actually let me get rid of some of these other things. I don't need chord charts. I don't need the clock. Don't need the messages or flashing the color. Don't need notes. Don't need the video countdown. So what I could do here is have a very small next slide, and then I can create a largish current slide, or I could not have the next slide at all, and then that would show a still of what is on the screen. So in your situation, that's probably the way that I would do it. You might, instead of having the text on the next slide, you might do also a static slide, and you'll see that the next slide here is showing a still of what the next slide would be, which is right here. So if I put that in, and now we go to, let's see, Command 4, no, it's not Command 0. There we go, Command 3. So you'll see that I have my current slide as it's showing here, and my next slide kind of small. So that's probably what I would do for you in that situation, Dylan. Evan asked the minimum specs for ProPresenter. So let's go to renewed vision.com. And software ProPresenter requirements. Okay, and here we have the minimum requirements. Mac OS 10.13, also known as High Sierra or Mojave, they are working on Catalina. It's fine if you buy a new Mac that has it, from what I hear from the tech support people there. But if you have a current Mac and you update from Mojave, to Catalina, sometimes there are issues, and they're still trying to iron out that sometimes there are issues, because they're not always issues, because that would be too easy. Sometimes there are issues. 2.4 gigahertz Intel Core 2 Duo or better, I would say, or better is where you want it. 4 gigs of RAM. My computer has 8. It's much better with 8. If you could get 16, if you get like one of the 2018 Mac Minis, it has user swappable RAM, so you could do that. Graphics card, dedicated is better. I don't have a dedicated card. I have the onboard card, and it's okay right now. Stage display, you need an additional output, a direct dedicated additional output. A Matrox dual head to go or triple head to go will not work. You can't split the output, at least not in ProPresenter 6. Windows, you need 8 Pro or 10. 8 Pro with Media Center. 10 is really what is better. I would, if I were you, get the Pro version, because sometimes the home has things that are annoying about it. An i5 or equivalent AMD, 8 gigs of RAM. One thing you should know, right now Pro 6 on Windows is 32-bit. So don't think, oh, I'll get 64 gigs of RAM. Won't help at all. Anything else that's running might be able to address it, but it won't be able to address more than 8 gigs. A dedicated discrete graphics card that supports OpenGL 3.2 or higher. Absolutely pay attention to that. I've seen more Windows people say, well, it's better, except it doesn't support OpenGL 3.2 or higher. And so I always look for these cards. And I always would avoid these cards because it says they're not recommended. So please keep that in mind. I know that technically these might be better cards than these, but they know what they're talking about. So there you go. That is the minimum specs, and they're on this. So I'm going to thought I was going to type that in. Let's see why that's not letting me copy it. Okay, and paste. There we go. So that is the answer to your question, Evan. Jordan asks, what features do you want? Oh, what features would I like in Pro 7? I'm not going to answer that right away. Okay, next, I think I did a video on it. Why don't you check that video? Any experience with transferring project slides between a Mac and Windows version of Pro 6? I know the Windows version is inferior to Mac, however, I do notice that it messes up the line spacing. Yes. Let's talk about that real quick. So if we go into the Mac version, okay. So if we go into the Mac version, back into Editor, right-click, Edit Slide, you'll notice that I've got all kinds of font things here. I can change the space between letters. I can change the height of letters. I can do all kinds of stuff. That's all built into Mac OS, and so what Renewed Vision did is they just referenced it. It's not built into Windows. So Photoshop built their own, but it's not built into Windows. Other software, they've built their own, but it's not built into Windows. So in Pro 6, there's no easy way to get all that stuff. So that's why if you tweak some of these other features, it doesn't show up. Also make sure the resolutions are identical. So if it's 1080p, make sure it's 1080p 16 by 9 and not 16 by 10. Also make sure the fonts are identical. So this is actually bit me before. Let's see if I can find the font that bit me. Well, so for example, Times and Times New Roman, I wouldn't recommend that you use those. But if you had Times on one and Times New Roman, you'll get odd things that'll happen. Arial and Arial Black. Let's see, Helvetica and Helvetica New, that actually bit me, even going between Macs, because one of them had Helvetica and the other one had, I guess it's New. I've never actually heard it pronounced, but it has that. So those are the things that I would make sure. Also, the Windows version doesn't have the MIDI module, so it kind of like causes problems if you're using the MIDI module on the Mac version and you transfer over and edit and transfer back, that causes problems. Not like crashing problems, more like the MIDI keys that you put in disappear. So that's a bit of a problem. So that is some of the differences. Again, 64-bit versus 32-bit is also something. Okay, Evan asks, projecting lyrics with motion background, video playback, and stage display. Is that, oh, yeah, so the things that, anytime it said recommended, I would go with that. So don't try and get the cheapest version you can. Always when you're buying a computer, you want to buy the most of what you can't upgrade, and then upgrade stuff that you can. And depending on the computer, even across Windows and Mac, sometimes the RAM is soldered in. And so you want to err on the side of a little bit more. If it's not soldered in, then get what you need, and then later on when you get more money, then you can swap that out. So keep that in mind. Okay, Abraham Ngayan, I hope I said that right. It really matters to me that I pronounce people's names right. Any tips to save time creating Bible verse slides with 2 languages on one slide? I don't know that. Probably what I would do if I were you is I would put all of them in one language, then put all of them in another language, then go to Reflow Editor. Let's see here, where's Reflow Editor? Sorry, it's been a minute since I've used that. I guess that's under View. Yep, it is. So Reflow Editor, Control R. So basically, you can combine slides by clicking your mouse at the beginning of the second slide and doing a backspace. So that's probably the fastest way. You know, put in all your verses in one language, put in all your verses in another, interweave them, and then go into Reflow Editor and fix it like that. That's probably going to be your best bet. And you can see that the formatting did not copy over. So that's the fastest. It might give you issues on the stage display though. Depends on what you're doing. So just keep that in mind. So let me Sorry. Okay, Joshua Cortez. Wow, you guys have a lot of questions. Where can I find props and how do I put them on? Brad answered, Joshua, props can be selected if you have the prop button in the ribbon or right click on the slide and go to the cue palette. Absolutely the case. I don't know if that Brad is a Brad Weston who has forgotten more about ProPresenter than I've ever known since he made it, but he's knowledgeable, this Brad is, so that's a way to do that. So, okay, and back to Dylan. Thank you for answering my question. The only other thing is we export our PowerPoint as JPEGs and made a document for sermon series and then add them as picture. Would that still work the same to use the static image in the stage display? Yep, because this background over here is basically a static image. And you'll notice it's showing up on the stage display here. So that would do it. You could instead import them as text. Personally, that's how I prefer to do it because then I can tweak stuff last minute when people go, oh, it turns out we misspelled Jesus's name. No problem, I can fix that as opposed to going back into PowerPoint, exporting again, and doing it again. I prefer the text, but that's just me. And I've been doing this long enough that I can tell when something's PowerPoint and it just feels cheap to me. Maybe just because of the 10 billion PowerPoint slides I've seen in business things as I've freelanced and done that sort of stuff. So if you have any more questions, oh, Juan has one. I will answer your question, Juan, here in just a second. Oh, and Margie Beard has a question that she put in the chat. So let me answer those here in just a second. Let me first just tell you real quick about, as I said, that was a high-level overview. I normally do like 8-hour classes when churches have me in. So still a lot. I didn't cover how to make templates. I didn't cover all the different cues in the cue palette. I didn't cover how to do a quick edit when you realize, oh no, the next slide has something that's problematic. Maybe it's just a typo, or maybe it's theologically incorrect and it's a big problem that you changed a word that now says something that's heresy. You know, something really annoying like that. So there's ways to do that. There is so much here, and this is just a quick overview. And I just wanted to show you first that I have a product, and don't let that scare you. I'm going to tell you how you can get at least a month of it for free here in just a second. With courses. So you've seen some of my videos on YouTube. What I've done is I've taken out all the advertising, taken out all the fluff, taken out all the introductory stuff, and organized them based on what you want to do. So I have the ProPresenter 6 Operators course, the Creation course, ProPresenter 5 for Beginners. That's an older one that most people won't need. ProPresenter 6 for Beginners, that's kind of like this, an overview. I've got one for pastors and teachers, but basically I covered little bits of these two courses tonight. So let me show you what's in them. So if I go into here, this is the Operators course. Now I designed this course, someone asked me earlier today, should one person create the presentation and also show it during church, Or should one person create the presentation and another person do the showing, the controlling of it? I think in answer to that, if you've got the people to do it, one person creating will give you, it'll look the same across weeks. You won't have one week where, oh, they've chosen Papyrus and MS Comic Sans for all the fonts. Great. And if you don't know, designers generally frown on the use of those two fonts, for example. Generally, it's nice to have someone to create the thing and someone to operate it. I think that operating ProPresenter is a good entry-level thing. So here's some of the stuff that I cover in this course. This is about the course itself. This is just 4 little videos, probably about 20 minutes total of tour of the ProPresenter UI, when to change the lyrics and what to do, whether the Holy Spirit moves or your song leader forgot where they were, doesn't matter, the result's the same, how to jump ahead. Finding your mouse, this is huge because sometimes you'll be going along and you'll move your mouse and where is it? Where is it? Well, in ProPresenter, there's a way to find the mouse. I've actually created a t-shirt that I sometimes wear with the keyboard shortcut on it. Foregrounds versus backgrounds, what the difference is, why you'd want to use one or the other. Turning on and off the output. When you don't see the output, it's good to know how to turn that on. Quickly editing a typo, controlling only the stage display. Did you know that you can basically show stuff to the congregation and then advance the stage display while what the congregation sees doesn't change? You can, and I'll show you how to do that. Props, someone asked about props earlier. Slide loops, countdowns, nursery messages, and other stuff, adding scripture. So those are just the basics of that. You can easily go through that in an hour or two, or just, you know, whenever you need to learn something, pop in, watch 5-10 minutes of video, pop out. So that is the operators course. We also have this one, which is the creation course. So this is talking about creating a presentation, working with text, working with video, the difference between audio effects and audio tracks. There is a difference. Creating and scheduling, there's in ProPresenter 6, there's a scheduler, so you could start the pre-service loop at a certain time every week. Start the clock, the countdown clock every week. Certain time automatically happens. So I talk about that there. Adding videos, showing YouTube videos. This is not available on YouTube anymore. The reason is twofold. First off, YouTube doesn't like it. Secondly, unless you get specific written permission from the copyright holder, it is illegal for you to show a YouTube video without their permission, even in church, even if you're not making money on it. So this is not available on YouTube anymore. They got mad at me for telling people how to do this. So I'm not telling people how to do this on YouTube. Slide element transitions. This is similar to animations in PowerPoint. Use them sparingly, but they can work. Non-printing guidelines, why you'd want to use those. Making photo slideshows. This is a cool little hack that I've got in there. The cue palette, using tags to organize media, websites as slides. This one is, as I say, more involved. Formatting and creating arrangements, enabling and using the all caps checkbox. I should probably change this because you no longer need to enable that, although it's another thing that's not available on the Windows version just yet. Using light text with light backgrounds, how to get around that problem. Repeating slides, using headers, sermon notes. There's some differences with sermon notes that I want you to know all about. bulleted text, fill in the blanks, and more about element transitions, adding scripture, and formatting scripture. So I'm going to touch on those two things here in just a minute. So those are two of the many courses that are available in my program, Church Tech U. Here, let me, yeah. So I also have a dedicated Facebook group for people. So you might know, if you're a part of the ProPresenter users group, that sometimes you'll ask a question and there will be so many answers and not all of them are correct. And so I have a more specific community where you can answer some stuff. These are some of the new members that I've welcomed into the fold. Kimberlyn Crawford, who's a new member. And I just want to tell you that I just had a Black Friday sale, which is totally over. It's not available anymore, and that price is probably gone forever. But I've got almost as good a price here. So let me give you that special link, because the first thing you should know is, in addition to that course, it includes all these and more courses. ProPresenter for live streaming, for example, it's in there. Troubleshooting ProPresenter, in addition to troubleshooting techniques, is in there. So I used a trick today, right as we were starting this webinar, that I discuss in here. So that's in there as well. And if you were to join with this link, the first month is free. Christmas is coming up. Use this, use the information in here to your heart's content, and then I hope you'll find it so useful that you'll want to keep going. You'll want to train all your team. You'll want to get tips from me on how to recruit a team, how to keep them motivated when you have to let a volunteer go. It's something that I recently had to do myself. So these are things here, and right now I'm doing, for the monthly plan, 25 bucks off. It's normally $49.97. It's going to be $24.97 for you as long as you're a member, except for the next 30 days. The next 30 days it's free, and if you want to cancel after that, that's cool. The yearly, you save $250, so it's $247. So it's even cheaper than the monthly price. It's like getting over 2 months free in addition to that. Or if you're a multi-site, it's basically less than 2 single campuses. So those are your 3 options, and you can use a purchase order if you prefer, and I'll send you an invoice and stuff like that. So let me go ahead and put that in, and I'd love for you to consider that as a way to augment your training and get your team all on the same page. So I'm not going to be apologetic about this, because I think it can absolutely help your team. You know, I've got almost 1,000 videos on YouTube. I've organized the stuff you absolutely need to know, and I've cut out the fluff, and as I say, some of it is not available on YouTube. So that is all in there. In addition to advanced access to my courses, there's like 5 tutorials I've released in the last few weeks that I have not yet released. And I'm working on another batch of them that are really going to be special, but I can't tell you about those just yet. But if you go with that, that'll work. So let me answer some more questions, and then we'll go from there. One, so I can change the font size in the Bible. Yes, let me show you how to do that. And Galaxy Tab A 10.5, I'll answer your question next. Actually, I promised to answer someone else's question that was up here. I hope you didn't just lose it. I'm having an issue with one of my ports on my computer. So Abraham thanked me for doing that. Okay. Margie, I'll answer your question here in just a second. Let me highlight that so I don't forget it. Let's look up something. Let's do my non-serious life first. X 26, 24. Okay, so X 26, 24. What I didn't know for years is that if you go down here, well, first off, you can change the template up here with this gear. So if you create a template, let's say you like the forest one scripture quote, okay? So changing it here changes it there. So that's a good way to do it. Another thing that is very helpful is down here, you have these three choices. Save as a document. That creates a new document like in the library, like a song notes, only it'll just, you can copy to the current document. So I've got Amazing Grace up right now. I could add this into Amazing Grace if I wanted to. Sometimes we'll do a song and then in the middle the worship leader will read scripture. No problem. If I know that scripture ahead of time, I can put that in the middle. And I can also save to the selected playlist. That would move it down here. You would also put it in the library, but it would just skip the step of putting it in the library, then I drag it in. It'll just put it in to the playlist. So those are the three things. And once it's in there, here, let me do just that. I really wish I didn't have to do that. Again, this is atypical of ProPresenter. This is only after I've real quick did kind of a nuclear thing to it, because I needed to get on this webinar to be with y'all. So you'll see that it's right here. Let me close out Bible. Yes, I know it doesn't exist. So you'll see that it's right here. And if I right click, I can edit the slide just as I normally would. So let's go in here, and instead of Avner, let's say that I want Arial. Bam, way too small, let's make that bigger. And now you can see that my non-serious life verse is, and as he thus made his defense, Festus cried out in a loud voice, Paul, you're crazy. You're welcome. That's my non-serious life verse. Found it when I was in college talking to the campus minister. Thought that was funny. I'd just been studying. I told him I thought I was going crazy because I'd studied. Non-serious. So that's that. Okay. Margie asked, how do I set a default font in ProPresenter 6? It always starts with the font I don't use, and I have to set it to my favorite. I create a template and apply that template to everything, and I think that'll do it. It's been a while, so try that, and if not, we'll talk about it a little bit more in the ProPresenter users group if you want. Okay, Galaxy Tab A 10.5 inch says, for what versions are the courses? I have some for ProPresenter 5. Most of them are ProPresenter 6. and it's the Mac version, which, as I say, is about 80 to 90% the same as the Windows version. So some stuff I'm working on should be about 100% the same, but we'll talk about that maybe in a future webinar, maybe a couple of weeks from now, maybe later, I don't know. So that's some other stuff that I really want to tell you about, but I just can't. So we'll go there. Any other questions? Anyone have anything? Let's see, answered live and answered live. Well, I got to tell you that this is my first time using this, and I was fretting over spending the extra money, but I'm glad that I did, because this is much better than the kind of put together version that I've used in the past. Anyone watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry I didn't get to your questions, but if you're a member of my mailing list, or if you're on the ProPresenter users group on Facebook, I announced both of those on those places, and you could have gotten the link to the Zoom webinar. So maybe next time I do one of these, which I think I might do an intermediate one next week. I need to check my schedule. Let's see here. Yeah, the 13th is a Friday, so I think I can do one on the 12th, which I believe is next week. 7 plus 5 is 12. Yeah. So keep that in mind. I might do it at a different time, and you can join me then. Or I do questions and answers for my Church Tech U people. So by all means, consider that. You do get a free keyboard skin. If you want the keyboard skin for the Magic Keyboard, this is one of them. Here, let me show you. So you can see the Command U is underline. Control T is Telestrator. So I've got the symbols you see down here and colors. So if you're colorblind, that's okay. I've got the symbol, and if you don't know the symbol, that's okay. Match the colors up, and that's how that works. And those come free. That's a $29.99 value. You can get them on Amazon, or free with a subscription to Church Tech U. So I hope that some of you will join me in that. And if there are no more questions, I've been going for a little over an hour, and I'm thirsty and really want to chug this, but I don't want to be like go. So Galaxy Tab A says, thanks so much. Juan thanked me. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for the interaction. It really makes it easier to do when there's interaction like this. So I will go ahead and I'm gonna stop that and just say thank you everyone for stopping by, and I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, this is Paul and Clifford from TrinityDigitalMedia.com and ChurchTechU.com, reminding you to go out. Yeah, you go out and change eternity. Bye.